The phone buzzed on my nightstand at 8:15 that Tuesday evening. When I saw Mom's name flash across the screen, my heart skipped a beat. It had been 8 months since I'd heard her voice, 8 months since they kicked me out of their house for refusing to hand over my life savings to my sister. Now here she was calling me like nothing had happened. But I could hear the desperation in her voice even before she spoke. Something was very wrong, and somehow I already knew what this call would be about. Before I dive into this painful but eye-opening journey, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt torn between family loyalty and protecting yourself. And let me ask you this. Have you ever been asked to sacrifice everything for someone who would not do the same for you? Let's explore this together. I still remember the day everything started falling apart. I was 28, working as an accountant at a mid-sized firm in downtown Portland, and I had just reached a milestone I'd been dreaming about for years. After 6 years of careful budgeting, skipping vacations, and living in a tiny studio apartment, I had finally saved $45,000. Every penny had a purpose. It was my future, my security, my ticket to homeownership in a city where rent kept climbing higher every month. My family had always been tight-knit, or at least that's what I thought. There was Dad Jim, who worked construction and always smelled like sawdust and coffee. Mom Patricia managed the local grocery store and prided herself on being the family's emotional center. Then there was my younger sister Sarah, 25 years old, with a 3-year-old daughter named Emma. Sarah had always been the family favorite, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, even when she dropped out of college, even when she got pregnant with Emma by a guy who disappeared the moment he heard the news. I loved my sister, I really did. Growing up, I'd shared my toys, helped her with homework, and covered for her when she snuck out to meet boys. As adults, I'd slip her $100 here and there when she needed groceries or when Emma needed new shoes. It never seemed like much, and Sarah always promised to pay me back when she got on her feet. Of course, that day never came, but I didn't mind. Family helps family, right? My life was simple but satisfying. I lived in a converted garage apartment behind an elderly couple's house, paying $800 a month for about 400 square feet of space. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I had a small bed, a tiny kitchenette, and a desk where I worked on side accounting jobs to boost my savings. Every evening I'd sit at that desk and update my budget spreadsheet, watching those numbers grow slowly but steadily toward my goal. That Tuesday in March changed everything. Sarah showed up at my door around 7 in the evening, her mascara streaked down her cheeks, and Emma clinging to her hip. The moment I opened the door, she collapsed into sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and desperate. Emma, confused by her mother's tears, started crying too, and suddenly my tiny apartment felt overwhelmed with their pain. "Natalie, I need your help," Sarah whispered between gasps. "I'm in serious trouble." I guided them to my small couch, made Emma a peanut butter sandwich, and put on cartoons while Sarah told me her story. The details came out in fragments mixed with tears and apologies. She had credit card debt, serious debt, $15,000 spread across multiple cards. The minimum payments had become impossible, and the collection calls were getting more aggressive. Last week, she'd received a letter from an attorney threatening to garnish her wages. Worse yet, someone had mentioned child services, suggesting that if she couldn't provide financial stability, Emma's custody could be questioned. "I know I messed up," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I should have been more careful. But Emma needs me, and I need $15,000 to settle these debts and get back on track. You're the only person I can turn to." My heart ached watching her pain. The logical part of my brain immediately started calculating. $15,000 would leave me with $30,000, still a substantial emergency fund, but not enough for the down payment I'd been planning. The emotional part of me wanted to fix everything for her to make that scared look disappear from Emma's eyes. "Sarah, I can give you $3,000, I said carefully. "That's my emergency fund, but I can rebuild it. $3,000 should help with the most urgent payments while you figure out a payment plan for the rest." The relief I expected to see never came. Instead, Sarah's face twisted with anger and disappointment. $3,000, Natalie, you have $45,000 sitting in your account. I need 15. You're being selfish. The word hit me like a physical blow. Selfish. For wanting to keep the money I'd sacrificed years to save. For having a plan for my own future. I'm trying to buy a house, Sarah. That money represents 6 years of my life. And Emma represents my entire life, she shot back. You don't have kids, you don't have anyone depending on you. This is just money to you, but it's everything to me. She gathered up Emma and stormed out, but not before delivering one final blow. I'm going to tell Mom and Dad how you really feel about your family. 2 days later, my phone rang. Mom's voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. Natalie Ann, what is this? I hear about you refusing to help your sister. The way she used my full name told me everything I needed to know about how this conversation would go. Sarah had already painted her version of events, and I was starting from a position of guilt. Mom, I offered to help. I gave her $3,000. $3,000, Mom's voice rose. Your sister is about to lose her child, and you give her pocket change. Family comes first, Natalie. You're being selfish. There was that word again. Selfish. For working 60-hour weeks and living like a monk to save money. For having dreams that extended beyond rescuing everyone else from their poor decisions. Dad got on the phone next. His disappointment was quieter but somehow cut deeper. Sarah has a child to think about, he said simply. You're single, you have no responsibilities. This should be an easy decision. Easy. As if 6 years of sacrifice could be erased with the stroke of a pen. I tried to explain my position, my plans, my own need for financial security. But their minds were already made up. In their eyes, I had become the villain in Sarah's sob story, the sister who valued money over family, who was too selfish to help a struggling mother. That night, I called my best friend Jessica, needing someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. You offered her $3,000, Jessica said firmly. That's incredibly generous. The fact that she's demanding more tells me this isn't really about Emma's welfare. But even Jessica's support couldn't quiet the guilt settling in my chest. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe good sisters sacrifice everything for family. Maybe I was just making excuses to hoard money while Emma suffered. The weight of their disappointment followed me through the next week, making it hard to concentrate at work, hard to sleep, hard to feel good about anything I'd accomplished. The family dinner invitation came that Friday, wrapped in Mom's sweetest voice. We miss you, honey. Come over Sunday for pot roast just like old times. I should have known it was a setup, but part of me desperately wanted things to go back to normal. I missed Emma's sticky hugs and the way she called me Auntie Nat. I missed feeling like I belonged somewhere. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had always been sacred. The smell of Mom's pot roast would fill the small dining room, and we'd spend hours catching up, laughing, planning family trips we'd never take. But this dinner felt different from the moment I walked in. The conversation felt forced, punctuated by meaningful looks between my parents. Sarah wasn't there, which should have been my first clue. Instead, the entire evening revolved around talking about her struggles, Emma's needs, and the family's obligation to help those in crisis. Mom kept mentioning Emma's upcoming preschool enrollment, the medical bills from her last ear infection, the worried look in her innocent eyes. She keeps asking when Mommy will stop crying, Mom said, dabbing her own eyes with a napkin. That poor baby doesn't understand why her world is falling apart. Dad mostly stayed quiet, but his silence felt loaded with judgment. When he did speak, it was to mention practical things. How much childcare costs, how hard it is for single mothers, how important it is for families to stick together during tough times. As if on cue, Emma burst through the front door just as we were finishing dinner. She'd spent the day with Sarah's friend, and her arrival transformed the heavy atmosphere. She ran straight to me, chocolate ice cream still smeared on her cheek, demanding a horsey ride around the living room. Playing with Emma felt like breathing again. She was pure joy, untainted by the adult drama swirling around her. As I carried her on my shoulders, making airplane noises while she giggled, I could feel my parents watching us with calculated intent. "See how much she loves you," Mom said softly. "You're so important to her, Natalie. You have the power to secure her future." The manipulation was so subtle, so wrapped in genuine emotion that it almost worked. Almost. The following weekend brought the escalation I should have seen coming. Sarah arrived at my apartment on Saturday morning with Emma in tow, claiming she needed someone to watch her daughter while she went to a job interview. I was happy to help, looking forward to a day of coloring books and playground adventures. But after an hour of playing princess dress-up, I noticed Sarah still hadn't called to check in. Emma kept asking when Mommy would be back, and I started to worry. 4 hours passed, then 6. When Sarah finally returned that evening, she reeked of cigarette smoke and had that slightly frantic energy I'd learned to recognize from our teenage years. "How did the interview go?" I asked, handing over Emma's backpack. "Fine, great, they'll call me next week," she said, quickly avoiding eye contact. Something felt wrong. Sarah had never been a good liar, and this felt like a lie. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I drove past the business where she'd claimed to have an interview. It was closed for renovations had been for months, according to the sign. My stomach dropped as pieces started clicking together. Later that week, I did something I'm not proud of. I followed Sarah. What I discovered made me physically ill. She hadn't been job hunting. She'd been at the Chinook Winds Casino 40 minutes outside town, sitting at a blackjack table with a pile of chips in front of her. The gambling explained so much. The constant financial crises, the inability to hold down jobs, the desperate need for large sums of money. Sarah didn't just have credit card debt, she had a gambling addiction that was destroying her life and threatening Emma's stability. Armed with this knowledge, I went to my parents' house that Thursday evening, determined to make them see the truth. I found them in the living room watching television and sharing a bowl of popcorn like any normal retired couple. "I need to talk to you about Sarah." I began settling onto the couch beside Mom. "If this is about the money again, Natalie, I don't want to hear it," Mom said without looking away from the screen. "She's gambling, Mom. I followed her to Chinook Winds. She's not just in debt from normal expenses. She has a serious problem that money won't solve." Dad muted the television and turned to face me, his expression more annoyed than concerned. "Are you seriously trying to destroy your sister's reputation to avoid helping her?" "I'm trying to help her by not enabling her addiction." "Enough," Mom said sharply. "I won't listen to you attack Sarah when she's already down. You're making excuses because you don't want to spend your precious money." The conversation spiraled from there. No matter what evidence I presented, what logic I used, what concerns I raised about enabling addiction, my parents refused to consider that their baby girl might have a serious problem. In their minds, Sarah was a struggling single mother who deserved unconditional support, and I was a selfish daughter looking for reasons to withhold help. The family meeting they called for the following Sunday felt like a trial where I'd already been convicted. Sarah, both parents, and I gathered in the living room where I'd played as a child, where we'd celebrated Christmas mornings and birthday parties and graduations. Now it felt like a courtroom. "This has gone on long enough," Dad announced. "Sarah needs $15,000. You have $45,000 sitting in your account doing nothing. End of discussion." "It's not doing nothing," I protested. "It's my future, my security, my down payment on a house." "Houses can wait," Mom said firmly. "Family cannot. You have 3 days to make this right, Natalie. Choose your money or choose your family." The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke. Sarah sat quietly, letting our parents fight her battle, occasionally dabbing her eyes for effect. Emma was at daycare, blissfully unaware that the adults in her life were tearing each other apart over money and pride and misguided love. I tried one more time to explain about the gambling, about the pattern of financial irresponsibility, about the difference between helping someone and enabling their destructive behavior. Sarah finally spoke up. "I cannot believe you would make up lies about me just to keep your money," she said, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine hurt. "I thought you loved me." I do love you, which is why I won't give you money to gamble away." That's when Mom snapped. She stood up so fast her coffee mug crashed to the floor, sending ceramic shards across the hardwood Dad had installed last summer. "How dare you accuse your sister of gambling?" she screamed, her face flushed with rage I'd never seen before. "How dare you stand there and lie about her when she's begging for help?" The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. Mom's palm connected with my cheek with enough force to turn my head, leaving a burning sensation that spread from my face through my entire body. In 28 years, my parents had never raised a hand to me. The physical shock was nothing compared to the emotional devastation of realizing that my own mother could hit me for refusing to enable my sister's addiction. "Get out," Dad said quietly, his voice deadly calm. "Get out of our house and don't come back until you're ready to do right by your family." The drive back to my apartment passed in a blur of tears and disbelief. My left cheek still burned from Mom's slap, but the real pain was deeper in the place where I'd stored a lifetime of love and trust for my family. How had protecting my own future become grounds for exile? How had asking questions about Sarah's behavior become a betrayal worthy of violence? My phone started ringing before I even made it home, Sarah calling to continue the emotional assault. "I hope you're happy," she said when I answered, my voice still shaky from crying. "Emma is asking why Auntie Nat doesn't love her anymore." What am I supposed to tell my daughter? The manipulation was so blatant, so cruel that it finally cut through my guilt and confusion. Using Emma as a weapon was unforgivable. Tell Emma that Auntie Nat loves her very much, but the grown-ups need to work some things out. There's nothing to work out. Either you help your family or you don't. It's that simple. But it wasn't simple, and we both knew it. Nothing about this situation was simple. Over the next few days, the family campaign against me intensified. Sarah posted on Facebook about her struggles as a single mother, carefully crafting a narrative that painted me as the cold-hearted sister who chose money over her niece's welfare. She never mentioned gambling, never mentioned the years of financial help I'd already provided, never mentioned that I'd offered $3,000 in immediate assistance. The post got dozens of sympathetic comments from family friends, distant relatives, and Sarah's fellow mothers. Several people shared it, expanding the circle of people who now viewed me as selfish and uncaring. My own reputation was being destroyed by half-truths and emotional manipulation, and there was nothing I could do to defend myself without seeming petty. Worst of all, I wasn't allowed to see Emma. When I called to check on her, Sarah wouldn't let me speak to her. "She's too upset about her auntie not caring about her," Sarah claimed, though in the background I could hear Emma's happy laughter as she played with her toys, clearly unaware of the adult drama. The isolation was suffocating. My parents had made it clear I wasn't welcome until I changed my mind about the money. Sarah was using Emma as leverage to force my compliance. Even some extended family members started treating me differently at a cousin's wedding, whispering behind my back and giving me cold looks across the reception hall. For 2 weeks I barely functioned. I went to work, came home, and sat in my tiny apartment feeling like I'd lost everything that mattered. The money I'd worked so hard to save felt meaningless when it had cost me my family. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe good people just sacrificed everything for the people they loved, no questions asked. It was Jessica who finally shook me out of my spiral. She showed up at my door on a Friday night with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine, took one look at my tear-stained face, and immediately went into best friend mode. "This ends tonight," she announced, unpacking containers of lo mein and sweet and sour chicken. "You're not responsible for saving Sarah from herself, and you're definitely not responsible for your parents' inability to see her clearly." As we ate and talked, Jessica helped me see the situation from the outside. A gambling addict was pressuring family members for money. When one family member refused to enable the addiction, the others had rallied around the addict instead of the person trying to help. It was a textbook case of family dysfunction, and I was the one person acting rationally. "You offered her $3,000, Jessica reminded me. "Most people don't have $3,000 to give away. The fact that you do and that you offered it freely proves you're not selfish. They're asking you to enable an addiction, Natalie. Saying no doesn't make you the villain. That conversation marked the beginning of my recovery. With Jessica's encouragement, I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma and addiction dynamics. Dr. Rivera helped me understand concepts I'd never heard of before: financial abuse, emotional manipulation, enabling versus helping, and the difference between supporting someone and sacrificing yourself for their dysfunction. When someone asks you to fund their addiction, saying no is the loving thing to do, Dr. Rivera explained during one of our sessions. Giving them money is actually cruel because it allows them to continue destroying themselves and their children. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild my sense of self. I threw myself into work with new energy, earning praise from my supervisor for a complex audit that saved the company thousands of dollars. My apartment, while still small, started feeling like a sanctuary instead of a prison. I began eating better, sleeping better, and taking care of myself in ways I'd neglected during years of stress over Sarah's problems. 3 months after the family meeting, I was promoted to senior accountant with a 20% salary increase. The recognition felt like proof that I had value beyond my ability to rescue other people from their mistakes. I was good at my job, respected by my colleagues, and building a life I could be proud of. With the promotion came the ability to finally move forward on my house hunting dreams. I found a small 2-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy but mine. The day I got the keys, I sat on the empty living room floor and cried with relief. This was what my 6 years of sacrifice had earned me. Not just a home, but the freedom to make my own choices about my future. My new neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, was a retired elementary school teacher who quickly became like the mother I'd lost when mine chose Sarah's addiction over my well-being. She invited me for tea, shared stories about her 40 years in education, and never once asked me for money or made me feel guilty for having boundaries. I started taking yoga classes at the community center, joined a hiking group for young professionals, and slowly built a social circle that didn't revolve around crisis management and emotional manipulation. For the first time in my adult life, I experienced what peace felt like: the absence of constant worry about someone else's problems, the freedom to enjoy my own success without guilt. But peace doesn't mean you stop caring about people. I still worried about Emma, constantly wondered if she was safe, if Sarah's gambling had escalated, if my parents were struggling with the financial burden they'd taken on by enabling Sarah instead of me. Information trickled in through mutual friends and social media, painting a picture that broke my heart but didn't surprise me. Sarah's problems had gotten worse, not better. Without my $15,000 to temporarily solve her crisis, the gambling addiction had continued its destructive path. 6 months after our confrontation, she was arrested for stealing money from her part-time job at a department store. The charges were eventually dropped when she agreed to enter a court-mandated rehabilitation program, but not before Emma had been temporarily placed with my parents while Sarah spent 2 weeks in jail. My parents, who had been so certain that money was the solution to Sarah's problems, now found themselves raising a confused 3-year-old while trying to manage their own fixed income. Dad had to come out of retirement to work part-time construction, his 60-year-old knees screaming with every step. Mom picked up extra shifts at the grocery store, looking exhausted every time I glimpsed her around town. The extended family whisper network, which had once painted me as the villain, began to shift as the truth about Sarah's problems became impossible to hide. People who had shared her Facebook post about my supposed selfishness now quietly reached out to ask how I was doing, offering apologies that felt too little too late. 8 months after that terrible family meeting, I was in my kitchen preparing dinner when my phone rang. Mom's name on the caller ID sent a familiar jolt of anxiety through my chest, but this time it was mixed with something else: pity. When I answered, her voice sounded older, defeated in a way I'd never heard before. "Natalie, it's Mom." "I know. Hi, Mom." A long pause stretched between us, filled with 8 months of silence, hurt, and consequences neither of us had fully anticipated. We need to talk. About Sarah. About everything that happened. I think we made some mistakes." The admission felt surreal after months of being painted as the problem. But there was no satisfaction in being right, only sadness for all the pain we'd caused each other. "Sarah's in rehab again," Mom continued. "Court-ordered this time. She was caught stealing from her job, trying to get money for the gambling. You were right, honey. We should have listened." My throat tightened with unshed tears. Being right about Sarah's addiction was the worst kind of vindication. "How's Emma?" "She's with us. Has been for 2 months now. She keeps asking when Mommy's coming home when she can see Auntie Nat again. We've been struggling financially and emotionally. Taking care of a 4-year-old at our age." Here it came, the real reason for the call. "We need help, Natalie. Not a lot, just $5,000 for Sarah's attorney fees, and maybe some support while we're caring for Emma. I know we don't deserve to ask, but we don't have anywhere else to turn." The request hung in the air between us. $5,000, less than what I'd originally offered Sarah, but still a significant sum. Part of me wanted to hang up to let them figure out their own way forward after 8 months of treating me like I didn't exist. But a bigger part of me still loved them, still wanted Emma to be safe and cared for. "I'll help with Emma," I said carefully. I can set up accounts for her preschool, her clothes, her medical expenses. I can contribute to her care directly, but I won't give you cash and I won't pay for Sarah's legal problems." That's fair. More than fair. We don't deserve your kindness after how we treated you." "No, you don't," I said gently but firmly. "But Emma deserves a stable life, and if I can help provide that without enabling Sarah's addiction, I'm willing to try." Mom started crying, then the sound carrying 8 months of regret and exhaustion. "I'm so sorry, honey. We were wrong about everything. You tried to tell us and we wouldn't listen. We chose Sarah's lies over your truth and we lost you in the process." The apology I'd dreamed of hearing felt hollow now. Sorry didn't undo 8 months of exile. Sorry didn't erase the slap across my face or the cruel things said in anger. Sorry didn't bring back the family dinners, the holiday traditions, or the easy love we'd shared before addiction and money and pride tore us apart. "If you want to rebuild our relationship, we all need family therapy," I said. "Including Sarah when she gets out of rehab. We need to learn how to communicate without manipulation, how to help each other without enabling destructive behavior." "Yes, absolutely. Whatever it takes." But even as Mom agreed, I wondered if it was too late for us. Too much damage had been done, too many words couldn't be taken back. Trust once shattered doesn't simply reassemble itself because someone says they're sorry. In the weeks that followed, I did help with Emma. I set up a savings account for her college education, arranged for her preschool tuition to be paid directly by me, and took her shopping for clothes and toys when my parents agreed to supervised visits. Seeing her again was wonderful and heartbreaking. She'd grown so much in 8 months, developed new interests and vocabulary, but she'd also developed an anxiety around adult conflict that broke my heart. My parents and I began seeing a family therapist, slowly working through the damage caused by years of dysfunction around Sarah's addiction. It was painful work acknowledging how my role as the responsible child had enabled my parents' willful blindness about their problem child. We were all complicit in the family dynamics that had made Sarah's addiction worse instead of better. Sarah completed her rehab program and returned home with new tools for managing her gambling addiction, but also with a long road ahead. Our first family therapy session together was awkward and tense, filled with apologies that felt rehearsed, and promises that remained to be tested by time and circumstance. I learned that real forgiveness isn't a single moment of decision, but an ongoing choice to release resentment while still maintaining healthy boundaries. I could love my family without trusting them completely. I could help Emma without enabling Sarah. I could rebuild relationships without forgetting the lessons I'd learned about my own worth and the importance of protecting my own future. The money I'd refused to give Sarah was still sitting in my account, minus the down payment on my condo. It represented more than financial security now. It represented my ability to say no when saying yes would be harmful, my commitment to my own dreams and goals, and my understanding that sometimes love means refusing to enable someone's self-destruction. I learned that saying no to family doesn't make you selfish. It makes you honest. Protecting yourself from financial manipulation doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about everyone involved to refuse to participate in dysfunction. Sometimes walking away is the greatest act of love you can offer both to the person you're refusing to enable and to yourself. The question I'd been asked, choose your money or your family, had turned out to be a false choice. Real family doesn't ask you to choose between loving them and protecting yourself. Real love doesn't demand financial sacrifice as proof of devotion. And real healing can only begin when everyone involved stops pretending that enabling addiction is the same thing as showing support. Standing in my own kitchen 8 months later, I realized that losing my family had actually taught me what family should be. It's not about blood relationships or shared history or unconditional financial support. It's about people who encourage your growth, respect your boundaries, and love you enough to want what's best for you even when that's not what's easiest for them. The hardest lesson was that love without boundaries isn't love at all, it's just enabling. And sometimes walking away is the greatest act of love you can give both to them and to yourself. The question isn't whether they'll understand your choice, but whether you can live with the consequences of not making it. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between helping someone and protecting yourself from their destructive patterns? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding the strength to set boundaries even when it hurts. Share this with someone who might need to hear that saying no doesn't make them a bad person. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your worth isn't measured by how much you're willing to sacrifice for others, but by how well you balance love for others with respect for yourself. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.